when I turned 14, I struggled with really severe performance anxiety, and I made decisions accordingly. And I kept on falling short of my own expectations, and I just kept on quitting. Looking back, I realized that jumping on the wrong train was the moment where I fired my performance anxiety as my guide in life. I just want to do something because it's fun. Like, I just want to play again. I grew up in Stockholm, Sweden, and I was this really happy, cheerful kid. And no, I was actually a really happy kid. I always say I was a free-range child, so kind of like a free-range chicken, but minus the slaughter, ideally. And I was always roaming around the forest, and I was very creative, and I was always up to some project. But then, when I turned 14, we started getting grades in school. And it was like a switch flipped for me, because I realized that I could measure how smart I was. And it turns out that I really, really, really wanted to be smart. So I started studying a lot, which was great. The part that wasn't great was that if I got a B on a test, I would cry. And I wouldn't just cry a little bit, like I would cry for days. And this is something that happens a lot, especially to young girls. When we hit our teens, suddenly it stops being okay to be bad at something. A study conducted with over 500,000 15-year-old students found that female students reported higher fear of failure than male students in 56 out of 59 countries that they studied. And the ones that had the worst fear of failure were high-achieving female students in high-achieving schools in more gender-equal societies. So my Swedish little ass did not stand a chance. Bottom line, I struggled with really severe performance anxiety, and I made decisions accordingly. Not only did I avoid things I didn't think I would be good at, but I also enjoyed things that I didn't think had enough prestige. When I was 16, I moved to China. This is the city that I spent a year living in. And as much as I wanted to go to China because I was interested in Chinese culture and I wanted to learn Mandarin, I also wanted to do it because it was hard and I wanted to be tough. And I started studying physics in college, and I dropped out after a year, picked it because once again, it was the hardest thing you could do. Then I applied to med school and I got in, but I actually never accepted my spot because it was the hardest thing you could do. And then in 2013, I was running a startup because once again, it was the hardest thing you could do. But then one morning, when I was about to head into the office, instead of taking the train to the office, on a whim, I jumped on the wrong train. Speaking of trains, here's a hat that I made that has a train track running around the brim, which is completely besides the point, other than that it's a train, and also that the guys at the model train store told me that I would never be able to do it, and they don't know that they've been proven wrong. Anyway. So I jumped on the wrong train, didn't go into my office, and instead I went to the house where I grew up. And my parents had gotten divorced years before that. And I remember sitting on a rock in the forest where I used to romp around naked and carefree, putting things on fire like the Swedish child I was. And I was like, what am I doing here? And I realized that I needed to change my tactic because pushing myself to be excellent wasn't working out. I'd set the bar too high and I kept on falling short of my own expectations and I just kept on quitting. Okay, there's this idea that things that are important must be hard, and thus that things that are hard must be important. And that if something is enjoyable, then that means that it has to be indulgent in some way. And looking back, I realized that jumping on the wrong train was the moment where I fired my performance anxiety as my guide in life. And instead, I gave the job to enthusiasm. I decided, you know what? I just want to do something because it's fun, even if it's easy or doesn't have a lot of prestige. Like, I just want to play again.